everybody, welcome back to another episode of Healthy Habits. My name is Michael Serpell, and this week we will be talking about the importance of good posture. Now here's a fun fact for you. Every move you make is affected by your posture. So, if you have bad posture, this can lead to poor movement and injury. But, if you have good posture, it makes you look slimmer, younger, and more confident as well. Now, let me introduce you to our special guest this week. His name is Emilio Kardaris, and he's a man who knows his posture. He is the Director of Medical at the RMIT Sports Academy. In a normal world, Emilio supervises the RMIT Chiro and Osteo students and the Women's Football Academy. As a chiropractor, he has a wealth of knowledge on musculoskeletal structure and function. That is why Emilio is the perfect guest for this week's episode. Emilio, welcome to you. Firstly, how does my posture look at first glance? Is it structurally sound? Do the 33 vertebrae in the spinal column appear to be completely vertical?
G'day Michael, and g'day all you healthy habit viewers out there. Look, posture is one of those things that a lot of people really love to talk about, and everyone claims to be an expert on. So I'm going to also join that bandwagon and become acclaimed expert on posture as well. Posture is one of the things that a lot of people will really start to get lost on when they lose sight of what it's actually designed to do. And that little fun fact that you shared earlier, Michael, is spot on. You know, your posture is designed to move, and you are designed to move with your posture. So looking at you firsthand, you're looking pretty good. You know, you're sitting up nice and straight, and maybe we could potentially question the fact that the hair pushed off to your side might be leaning you over to the one side. You know, depending on how heavy that head of hair is. Look, in all seriousness, in order to assess someone's posture, we need to look at you from the front, look at you from the side, and get a better understanding of what it is that you're trying to do in your day-to-day life. Glad you asked the question about the vertebra too, because what I have here in front of me is I have magically stumbled across a spine of a hobbit. It could actually even be someone who didn't hand in their assignments on time. People say that they drop out of a course or they fail a course, but this is what really happens to them. But look, jokes aside, what you can see here is you can see all the various vertebrae in the spine. When we stand it upright, it does look like it's nice and level in that front-on view. But as soon as you turn it onto the side, we actually want to be able to see that there are curves in the spine. You know, a C-shaped curve in the low back, a D-shaped curve in the mid-back, and a C-shaped curve through the neck. Because what happens is as we're moving around, this spine with its curves is actually designed to spring. So as you're moving along, you're springing around and moving in an efficient manner. If you were solid and just straight up and down, you wouldn't be able to bend forward without completely falling over.
Well, you heard it here first, all you RMIT students. If you have a bad attendance record and a good posture, those chiropractors are going to be after you.
Yeah, definitely. It's really hard to come across a good specimen these days. So yeah, if we find one, we wait for them to, start to misbehave.
Now, Emilio, in order to ensure good posture when working from a desk like this one, what are some good ways you can check if your desk setup is ergonomic?
Great question, Michael. It's definitely something that a lot of people had to become accustomed to when they moved into a home-based setting. And I think you would have seen, all the news reports out there that were talking about, toilet paper getting stripped off the shelves. Well, Officeworks was having a similar problem with all their furniture being stripped from their shelves too, as people tried to create an ergonomic workspace. There are lots of different ways that you can approach ergonomics, and it is a multi-million, if not perhaps even billion-dollar industry when you look at it from a worldwide perspective. Essentially, to make it nice and simple, you don't have to have a really super fancy chair, you don't have to have a super fancy desk. What you want to try and do at the very minimum is to make sure that your computer screen, if you're working from a computer that is, to make sure your computer screen is almost level with your eyes and ideally a little bit beneath your eye level, so that you're looking more or less straight ahead at the computer screen when you're sitting up in an upright posture. And now the next question viewers might have is, what is an upright posture? That's an easy one to solve. I'm sure we've all sat on stools before, like a bar stool or even just a chair with no backing. An upright posture is designed so that when you're sitting on a bar stool or something that doesn't have a backing, that you're holding yourself in that upright position. And it can be really tempting to lean back onto the chair and just kind of let the chair do all the work for you. But I think you'll find the more you lean back and the more you actually relax your abdominal core and all those muscles that are designed to keep you upright, you're actually going to start feeling some aches and pains and some stiffness, as opposed to if you are sitting forward, not relying on the back of the chair and using those core muscles. They might work a little bit harder, which is something that's going to happen if you don't use them very often, but that is going to get you in that upright position, and then you can position your computer screen nicely. From there, using your different utensils like your pen and paper or a keyboard and mouse, you want to have them at a level where your arms are nice and relaxed with your shoulders. So you're not sitting in a position where your shoulders are up in this sort of space, and at the same time you're not having to lean forward to get to your stuff. So ideally something wireless works really well from a keyboard and mouse perspective. I've got my wireless keyboard and trackpad. That's what I like to use. But look, if that's something that's either inaccessible to you or out of your budget, totally fine. You can find wired keyboard and mouse. They usually run off USB, and you can pick them up from lots of different shops. So it's fairly accessible and fairly easy to set up an ergonomic setup at home without all the big fancy things.
So Emilio, essentially you're telling us that a couple of empty shoe boxes, a travel book, because hey, we won't need this one for a while, and a cookbook as well to remind us how healthy we are, can be perfect things to set up your laptop on for your ergonomic setup at home.
Definitely, Michael. You can't see what I've got set up here at home. I'm actually using a laptop, and I've got it sitting on a plastic storage container. And then that wasn't tall enough, so I grabbed a cookbook from the kitchen and popped that in underneath, and now it's sitting at a perfect height. Now, I'm not going to lie, I'm also sitting on a cushion.
And for all you short drivers out there, I'm sure you know exactly what we're talking about. So, Emilio, what are some common musculoskeletal issues caused by bad desk posture?
Some common things that people can experience when they've spent a lot of time at the desk. Conditions that are associated with fatigue. And when I'm saying fatigue, I'm not talking about mental fatigue or physical fatigue. I'm talking about the fatigue of the tiny little muscles that we have that run in between all of our spinal segments. So we're looking at issues that might result in a sore neck, and maybe the top part of your back as well might become quite sore and uncomfortable. The first thing you're going to realize is that you want to actually try and move. So a stiff neck or stiff shoulders and a stiff upper back is definitely something that happens with these sorts of presentations. And if that doesn't improve, that stiffness then turns into pain. Now the pain can travel further down into the lower part of your spine. It can travel out into your arms and you start getting a really sore shoulder. But you can also travel up into the back of the skull and into the head. And that's when you'll start experiencing headaches. But essentially what we want to try and do to avoid those situations is to just move. That movement is enough to refresh your spine and refresh your brain and refresh your posture.
And that actually is a perfect segue to my next question. So as a former film editor, as you can see here, there would be a lot of occasions where I would easily lose track of time and spend continuous hours editing on a computer screen, probably with some pretty average desk posture. Now, how often should we be getting up from our desk? And I would imagine it would be more than once every 6 hours.
Yeah, look, once every 6 hours is definitely a marathon stretch. And look, I'm going to put up my hand and say also guilty as charged for spending a little bit too much time in that seated position. Ideally, the research will say it's a good idea to get up out of that one position every 30 minutes or every 1 hour. I like to toe the line in the middle and say at least once every 45 minutes. If you can't get up every 45 minutes, that's okay. But just bear in mind that the longer you stay in that position, the more those tiny little muscles are going to fatigue, and that's going to turn into a painful situation should you not do something about it.
Now, what are some signs that students should take very seriously regarding pains in their musculoskeletal structure and function? For example, back pains that can't be ignored.
Great question, Michael. It's something that a lot of people do come to me and ask, how soon do I need to go and get something checked? We use a pain scale in our world where we rate things from 0 to 10, where 0 means that you're in absolutely no pain and everything feels perfectly fine and normal. to 10 being the worst possible pain that you can imagine. Bear in mind that a 10 out of 10 doesn't mean that you're comparing it to what other people have experienced. It's based on what you have experienced. Essentially, what we want to say is that if you have anything on a pain scale, remember that 0 to 10, of 4 and under, you probably don't need to go and see any sort of practitioner. That type of discomfort usually feels like stiffness, or it might feel like maybe a little bit of discomfort in your neck or in your low back. More often than not, works itself out within a couple of days. Best thing to do is to grab a heat pack or an ice pack. Research is out on both of those. It really comes down to which one you prefer. So grab a heat pack or an ice pack, pop it on the sore spot, and just try not to aggravate it by constantly moving in a way that hurts. But if the pain level is above 4 out of 10, so we're talking 5 and above, that kind of pain is definitely something that you need to get addressed. And realistically, you can go and see a chiropractor, an osteopath, a physiotherapist, a Chinese medicine doctor, your GP. You can see any of those practitioners and they will have the tools to be able to assess you adequately and say, here's what we think is going on and here's the best treatment program for that.
And finally, Emilio, the last few weeks we've heard the top 5 healthy eating tips, Vince's top must-do daily exercises and stretches, and today we have Emilio's top 5 exercises to alleviate muscle and joint stiffness from sitting all day. Emilio, we can workshop that long name if you wish, but I'm very, very excited to hear your top 5 tips.
Michael, you know what? We can probably leave that really long name because I want to make it look really funny when you've got the title pop up. Make that font nice and small. We're going to go for a world record here. So all you habitually healthy people, here are the top 5 things that I would recommend that you do to help yourself in a working from home or a studying from home environment. Tip number 1, and that's going to be a very simple one, is to make sure that your setup is ergonomic. We want to make sure that that computer screen is sitting just at your eye level or a little bit below. You can prop it up with anything you like, and at the same time, please make sure that when you're sitting down, you're going to be sitting on something where you're not relying on the chair to hold you up. You're using those core muscles to make sure that you're sitting in that nice upright posture. Tip number 2 is going to be to get yourself up and about at least every 45 minutes. We mentioned earlier that this is really, really important, not only to stop you from feeling like you're in discomfort, but at the same time to help refresh your brain and get your brain nice and active and happy. Tip number 3, if you're experiencing pain that's above 5 out of 10, please go and get that checked. Anything below 4 out of 10, do whatever you can to make yourself comfortable. It's most likely going to go away in just a couple of days, so you don't need to really stress out about it. Heat pack, ice pack, sauna, cold swim, doing some exercise is probably going to help that as well. Tip number 4 is going to be, if you can't get yourself to a practitioner, here is a very simple neck stretch that I can show you. So a very simple neck stretch that we can do is just to tilt off to one side and use our hands to help guide that stretch. So I'm going to grab my hand here. It's going to come over the top of my head and just going to very gently tilt it off to one side. And I'm not pulling or yanking my head down with my arm. I'm rather using my arm as a bit of a weight and guiding my neck into a nice, comfortable stretch. And I'm going to be holding that for about 30 seconds or so before I slowly let go, come back to the center and go over the other side and stretch the other way as well. If you find that doing that stretch is something that's causing pain levels of above 5 out of 10, time to go and make that appointment. Tip number 5, make sure you do the best you can to get yourself a really good night's sleep. Try and limit the amount of screen time that you're having for that last half hour to 1 hour before bed. There are lots of studies out there that will say that the bright lights from your screen, even when it's in night mode, can still stimulate your brain in a way to thinking that it still needs to be awake. Try to get yourself into a nice wind down routine and doing something nice and easy. So it could be read your favorite book, hopefully not something too stimulating, maybe do some journal writing. Try and get yourself into a nice and comfortable sleep routine, and remember that even though that might not lead to a really good night's sleep, because there could be a number of different things that are impacting on your sleep, it's going to get you set up for the best possible chance to give yourself a good night's sleep. If you're finding that a good sleep routine isn't helping you feel refreshed and waking up feeling good, then yeah, definitely go and see that practitioner.
Emilio, thank you so much for joining us today on Healthy Habits. Stay safe, happy and healthy during this period of time, and I'll be sure to balance out my hair to save my posture.
For someone like me with a shaved top, I'm built for streamline, so we might be okay. And likewise to you and to all the viewers out there, try and keep yourself as healthy and happy and safe as you possibly can.
Well, that is officially a wrap for another episode of Healthy Habits. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.